I'm live. Hey, everybody. Are we here? Are we on? I still, after doing this for 4 months, I still don't trust this system at all. Can somebody type in live chat if I sound okay, please? Thank you, David Rush. I appreciate that very much. All right, so we're trying a couple of things a little bit different here today, guys. We are actually we're intentionally running a much higher bit rate than we normally do. And we'll see how that goes. I am hoping that sometimes we get people say we get some stuttering things. So I've kicked the live stream up to the ultra low latency. So here, let's do a quick test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about a 9-second delay. So everything I say, you guys hear it about 9 seconds later, which can often probably make some sense why when you guys are watching on the texting on the live chat, and then you see me say something which almost seems rather delayed. Part of the reason there. The other reason is you guys ask a lot of questions and I can't keep up. All right. Okay. Well, anyway, welcome to the Mike Meyers Total Seminars channel. We got some serious dog barking going on out there. Total Seminars channel live stream. This is the Mike AMA. The goal of this AMA, Ask Mike Anything, is to provide those of us who are still struggling because of the coronavirus. Maybe you're having trouble getting in class, you're on your own. So this gives us all an opportunity to work together as we look to complete IT Fundamentals, A+, Net+, and Security+. Now we can certainly go outside of that, but that's kind of where that's our lane here at Total Seminars. But the goal here is to help each other out. This Ask Mike Anything runs from 2 o'clock Central Daylight Time, although that's probably about to change here pretty soon, isn't it? Next month? And it runs from 2 o'clock until 4 o'clock or until the questions run out. So, folks, you got to be really careful here and watch. If the questions run out, sometimes we end a little early. And doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's not a big deal. Remember, this is here to help you. So, number one, I would like you to ask questions. Just type them into the live chat. If you're a bit of a shy person, all you have to do is send me an email. So this is my email address. I'm michaelm@totalsem.com. This is the office phone number, which continues. I don't even know why I leave it up there. Just habit, I guess. Steam, I am Senor Pepe if you're a gamer. And in the last 6 months, I've gained like 300 or 400 Steam buddies, which is fun. And when in doubt, if you ever want to look me up, just type in the word DesWeds. DesWeds is a kinetic acronym, so I can hold on to my mouse and I can type DesWeds. And I picked it up a long time ago, and just the nice thing is I know no matter where I go, no one has the account DesWeds yet. So don't you guys start grabbing it either. I'm going to be crabby. All right. Let's see, who all is on? Tolit is running me at 1080p at 60, huh? I'm looking good. You can see all my bad skin. All right, so let's see who's here today. Ooh, all the usual suspects. I see them. Mr. Ruby is here. Mr. Ruby, you know we answered a lot of your questions. When was that, Scott? Was that last Wednesday? You had asked I think we had got a number of questions you had asked. Well, hopefully you got them. Mr. Ruby, Telewood, Elbow, Brendan S. Good to see you, Brendan S. Web Dev Bootcamp. Greg Davis. Chaco Taco, todo está bien. Mr. Ruby, hey Mike, can you review use of the XOR cipher and also collision versus broadcast domains? Both in terms of, yeah, I can do that. Mr. Ruby, let me scroll through, let's see what else is happening here. Well, sure, let's just dive right into that one. This is one I'd do a little bit better. Gosh. The only problem I have with doing XOR cipher is I don't really have an easy way to demo it. I guess, first of all, Mr. Ruby, the XOR cipher is not on the Security Plus, okay? I use the XOR cipher as your first example of a symmetric cryptography. Security Plus doesn't care about the XOR cipher at all. So, do you want to to me, the XOR cipher is like the simplest encryption you can do. And with a super simple algorithm like that, it allows me to introduce the concept of keys. You know what, Mr. Ruby? I just don't have a way to real time do stuff. You know what I mean? If I had a whiteboard behind me or something, we could easily do this right now. But I do have a pretty good demo thing. So we'll do XOR on Wednesday. Give me a little, pull up some old PowerPoints and such I could use to help explain that. It's not that it's that complicated, it's just that it's detailed, and the numbers have to be lined up or people get confused. But Mr. Ruby, as long as you understand, the XOR cipher is not on Security Plus. I'm glad to do it. The XOR cipher is just a very, very simple cipher I like to use as an introduction to cipher algorithms. It's about the simplest one we can do. We can set a key with it. It's the first time people see keys, which I think makes it really, really cool. But as long as you understand that. And you had another question. Also, collision versus broadcast domains. Okay, both in terms of Security Plus. I can tell you in Security Plus, the concept of collision versus broadcast domain will not come up there either. However, what I will tell you is that if you're taking Security Plus, you better know what a broadcast domain is. So that we can do. I'm going to have to pull out blocks or something again like I do on some of my videos. Anyway, collision domain versus broadcast domain. Collision domains are created with the old hubs. Now remember, when you got this little box with all these RJ45s connected to all these different computers, forget the internet for a minute, all right? Pretend like the entire universe that we know is only, I don't know, 4 computers, okay? And all 4 computers are plugged into this one box called a hub. A hub will take an incoming packet, or incoming frame, incoming Ethernet frame from one device, and then it will repeat that on every single one of the other plugged-in ports, okay? So a hub is a multi-port repeater. Now, hubs have been pretty much obsolesced for about 15 years now. I still talk about hubs a little bit because it helps people understand some conceptualizations. Anyway, one of the big problems you can run into with a hub is that you can have 2 computers that are plugged in, and both of these computers want to talk. All right, and in the world of Ethernet, you've got this built-in pair of electronic dice. It's a random number generator. And when a device wants to talk on an Ethernet network, the first thing it does is listens to hear if anybody else is on there. And if he doesn't hear anybody, he goes ahead and sends out his Ethernet frame. Sometimes 2 people will send out an Ethernet frame at the same time, and then you'll get what's known as a collision, where they'll both send, and it makes a mess, and nobody can hear anything. So that is a collision. So anybody who's plugged into the same hub, or if that hub is daisy-chained to 2 hubs, whoever would hear that collision is the collision domain. Okay? So a hub is a collision domain thing. Switches, when they were invented, really changed things a lot. A switch makes point-to-point connections. So if you've got those same 4 computers and computers 1 and 2 are talking to each other, nothing gets sent out to everybody. As long as it's unicast traffic that is designed to go to one particular computer, it'll always just go to those 2 computers and nobody else can hear it, which is good for security, right? The problem, well, it's not really a problem, is that switches can handle broadcast and multicast traffic as well. So if 2 devices were to broadcast simultaneously, you could still get collisions. So they actually can still deal with that. But we ignore that term because collisions happen very rarely on a switched network. What we're talking about there is we're far more interested in who can hear my broadcast. So if you've got those 4 computers that are plugged into the same switch, they're not going to have collisions hardly ever, but they do broadcasts, and that's why we call it a broadcast domain. So the only difference between a collision domain versus a broadcast domain is that collision domains are pretty much a hub thing whereas broadcast domains are the more common term that we use. Okay? And again, Mr. Ruby, there is no questions on the Security Plus that discuss collision domains that I'm aware of. However, and I don't think you'll see any questions on Security Plus that ask you what a broadcast domain is. They just assume you know what that is. Because there's going to be questions that build on that, right? Somebody's sending out an ARP, and Tammy can't hear it on the other side of the router. Well, duh, it's because routers don't pass broadcasts, right? So that would be a better way to look at that. But yeah, we do XR Cipher. We'll do XR Cipher on Wednesday because I want to get my pretty pictures up. All right, so what do we got going today? Well, for those of you, I don't quickly see any new faces, but there's always listeners in the background. For those of you who are kind enough to tune in, just because you show up, we're offering outstanding deals here at Total Seminars. This week's deals, 50% off of all A+, Net Plus, Total Tester, and, okay, it's the same deal as last week, which is a great deal. 50% all of our practice questions, 50% off all of our practice questions at www.totalsem.com. And all you got to do is go over there, pick up the practice questions you want, which are already extremely cheap. Our Total Tester is the brand name of our practice questions. And when you're at checkout, just type in the magic code AUTUMN, AUTUMN. Scott Jernigan will put that up for you. Make sure everybody is up to speed on that. And it's ridiculously low prices. Look at that. I don't have enough food. Look, I'm shrinking. Gatorade Zero, kids, except no substitution. All right. Patricia Grace is here. Oh, no, she's talking to other people. I'm not going to interrupt. Looking for questions. Oh. Time changes in November. Scarlet Red. Hey, Scarlet Red. Charlie Highgate. Hello. Andre is here. Coronavirus. Yeah, our government just locked us down some more. Yeah, I don't know. Corona's bad. A lot of people are dying. It's a serious thing. I'm one of those strange creatures. Depending on the topic, I'm either politically extremely left-wing or politically extremely right-wing. I'm not a centrist on anything. So I'll just keep my mouth shut. We'll talk about computer stuff. Tolowit, when manufacturers design their motherboards, do they make sure that the USB buses have enough power to use every single at once? Generally, yes. Remember, USB for the most part is really more, it's easier to think of USB as a networking criteria than it is a lot of people look at a USB as some kind of point-to-point connection. It's really not. So what will happen is you'll usually have 2 or 3 little USB networks on a single motherboard. And it's usually segregated by speed. So there'll usually be like a USB 1.1 hub. There'll usually be a USB 2 hub, although you're seeing less of that. Then there's going to be a USB 3.1. And even that last one changes depending, when they come up with a new version, for a while they'd have a USB 3.0 hub and a USB 3.1 hub. Then they had a USB 3.x hub. And these are all different motherboards, different chipsets, okay? It's not a CPU thing, okay? It's a chipset thing, and it's really up to the manufacturers what they think the best thing is to do. So you're going to see big differences, say, between a Gigabyte versus an Asus motherboard. And then like right now, you're seeing where it's going to have a USB 3.2 hub versus a 3.1. I think I could show that to you. Hang on a minute. We'll see. Like I haven't done this for a year, and every time I go into Windows 10, it makes some kind of huge update to itself that makes stuff that I used to be able to do impossible to do. So bear with me. All right, so I got USB controllers here. Okay, actually, I can show at least some of this to you. Stick with me. All right, let me pull this up for you guys. Here we go. All right. God, that's so tiny. Let me make that bigger for y'all. You know what? Yeah, this works. Bear with me. I wasn't expecting to do this today. All right, that should be a bit. Can you guys see that? I'm assuming you can. All right, so here I am in Device Manager in Windows. Let me minimize some of this stuff. Yes, I have a lot of network adapters. All right, so if you look right here, this is the USB controllers, all right? Each controller runs a USB network in essence, okay? So as we take a look at this, what I have is I have really only two controllers. I've got a NVIDIA controller, which I have no idea where that's coming from. This is always interesting. Obviously, I've got Intel built in. This is not an NVIDIA motherboard, so I'm not quite sure where that's coming off of. What would NVIDIA be? I'm going to have to keep looking at that. Bear with me a second, guys. It's an interesting one. There we go. So I'm really coming in cold on this one, all right? So I'm sure if I sat here and stopped the live stream for 3 minutes and did a quick inventory of all my USB devices on here, I would quickly come up with the answer on that. I know exactly where that is. I have an NVIDIA graphics card with a USB-C connector on it, which I don't use. Let me go back. Let's take a look at that again. And if that way you guys can see it. Okay. Which is there. Oh, there it is. So it's USB. I don't know what a policy controller is. So that's a little bit interesting. And then there's some root hub. Let me pull this up. What do we got here? Okay. So what I'm seeing the difference between hub versus controller, and I need to be careful about that one too. So the hub in a USB network is kind of like just the interconnection that all the USB, all those different ports that you see on the outside of your motherboard or that go into your dongles for your externals, all plug into. Now, in that hub, you can have multiple controllers on that one hub. So it's not uncommon to have like a USB 1.1 controller and a USB 3 controller. What's interesting on mine, and I don't have a quick answer for it, is why don't I show older USB? Even the most modern motherboards out there today usually will have a USB, older USB for like mice and stuff. And you can tell because those are going to be the USB type A ports that are usually going to be black, whereas the blue ones are pretty much the USB 3.x ones. So, and I do have, I have USB 1.1 on here? I don't know. And unfortunately, it would take me pulling off the mic and crawling around the back of my machine to check it out. I may just have USB 3 on here. And when I look at the device manager, that could very well be the case. Interesting. Oh, people are correcting me. Eric Crenshaw says, not always. Wait, I don't want to get you guys halfway and misquote you. Yeah, I know color's not standardized, Eric, but it's pretty standardized. I haven't run into a mainstream motherboard recently that doesn't stay to that standard or that non-standard. So, may not be a standard, but I still lean on it. Let's just say if I see a blue port, I'm going to assume it's USB 3X. And I'm going to hope to heck it's not USB 3.0. Where are we at? So do they make sure that USB buses have enough power to use every single USB connector at once? No, not at all. the amount of power that they use, used to be such a wonderful toy you could use with this. It was a Windows-based toy that would actually show you, for all the USB devices you have plugged in, how much power they would pull. And I haven't done this for a while. I'm just clicking through Device Manager here, because it used to be you had to have a third-party tool to be able to check all of your different power. It was a Hewlett-Packard Windows utility that you would pull in, but then people stopped using it because, in theory, like Windows 8 or 8.1 started to have, wait a minute, power data. That's just sleep stuff. It's not. Again, I picked the USB device in Device Manager, and I'm going into its properties, and I'm looking under details to see if there's any power stuff that's obvious to me. So I don't see that. I feel that motherboard manufacturers, this is my opinion, I don't have a source to quote that on, that motherboard manufacturers in general will provide enough power for most USB stuff, but I have run into situations where I've plugged in too many unpowered USB devices and pulled it down. Windows does have a rare, but it is out there. It'll pop up a warning that will say if you're using too much power. It's actually a little pop-up that comes up right on your desktop to say you're pulling too much power. Yes, I found that out the hard way. C. Plasman 2009. Hi, Mike. Hope your vacay was fun. It was fun. I had a good time. Glad to see you online despite the storms that have passed you by. I think we're okay. Henry Bruzeau. Hello from Louisiana. Voulez-vous qu'on son mon chambrolaise or something like that. Okay, Mr. Ruby, you did see all that stuff from last Wednesday. Outstanding. Good, good, good. Elbow. I has a question. Is it risky to use an older power supply unit, one that I can use and it's not old, it just wouldn't be considered? No, not really. The problem you're going to run into with older power supplies is a lot of times, in my opinion, older power supplies tend to be better unless they're using the Power 80 ratings stuff. And that they're fine. It's just that you run into connector problems. You know, it's not going to, they're all going to have a 24-pin P1 and P4 or P2, depending on what you need there. But it's usually video cards and stuff where you really get into trouble. The other thing is a lot of the older ones don't necessarily have enough rails, especially for more late generation graphics cards. And you can actually pull the whole system down at boot. If the system doesn't boot up, or it tries to boot up, and you're like, what's going on? And what's happening is your graphics card is just, and pulling all the power off the number one rail on your power supply. And as a result of that, the CPU never gets a proper power good, and it just doesn't pop. But no, I have very old power supplies, over 10 years old, that I still use on certain systems, and they work fine. As long as I have the connector. Yeah, I know you can always get an adapter for something or another, but I'm not a fan. Eric Crenshaw, what do you think of the new CEH? I haven't even looked at it. I know nothing of it. We were trying to get some folks from those guys to come over and do a presentation. It kind of fell apart on us. I have not done any research on the latest version of Certified Ethical Hacker, so I do not know. Eric Crenshaw, which is a better career, OSCP or CEH? Wow. I guess for me, Eric, and again, really what you're talking about is just an opinion here, right? So I could be wrong. I really like Certified Ethical Hacker. They're weird about their testing procedures and training materials, and they're expensive. But for me, a lot of times, I don't necessarily want to go with the best if I have choices in certification. I want to go with the one that's going to look best on a resume, because I want people to be able to recognize it. And I'm going to really throw a wrench into your life, Eric. And first of all, let me stress this to you more than anything else. I am not a CompTIA fanboy, okay? I have been a biggest critic of CompTIA for over 20 years, one way or another. It's just that when CompTIA does stuff right, they deserve to be told they're doing it right. CompTIA with the Security Plus, CYSA, CASP, and Pentest Plus has really started to position themselves as a contender for a legitimate security, IT security pathway, certification pathway, which I never really looked at them like that, to be honest with you. To me, pretty much all of CompTIA ended after Security Plus. Because from there, you'd go ISC, GSIA, whatever you wanted to do, CEH, Microsoft, Cisco, whatever. But they've really been doing a good job. And I will tell you, when I speak to people who hire other people, they know Pentest Plus. And the other thing is Pentest Plus, in my opinion, is a more challenging exam, and it's a lot cheaper than CEH. So I'm gonna leave it with that opinion for you to consider, sir. Yeah. So I'm making it worse than I said it better. I apologize for that, Eric. Mr. Ruby, if XOR is not on Security Plus, I'm all set. No need to review. Thanks. Too late now. See, Mr. Ruby, that's the problem, because for one gutsy person like you who asked the question, I guarantee you there are 6 cowards who are also listening and going, man, I'm so glad he asked that question. We're still going to do XOR. It's interesting. In fact, Scott Jernigan, didn't we do this already? Don't we have an entire video on, it would be symmetric cryptography, where we did one on XOR and did the big demo and showed the key. I'm going to check it out, Mr. Ruby. But yeah, you're okay, but I still like to do it. Because one of the things I like to do is, well, if you look at my Security Plus training materials, I like to do like an XOR, which just about anybody could crack in their brain, right? If you could understand binary off the top of your head. But I like to go from XOR and then start looking at these more complicated crypto systems. And I actually use the old DES encryption, and we actually run through, oh my gosh, it's painful. But in the videos, we run through a DES encryption process. And yeah, all 16 rounds, man, we do it. It's hilarious. Eric Crenshaw, hubs are worthless nowadays. I agree. I agree. The one play, I like hubs as, Eric, I like hubs as a training tool. A lot of times people have a hard time really wrapping their head around switches being point to point, whereas hubs just broadcast everything. And so a lot of times in a classroom, I still got an old 10 base T hub laying around, and I'll plug that thing in and just let Wireshark go on it. And it's literally, I can see everybody else's conversations. And then you plug in a switch and suddenly you can't. All you can see are broadcasts and unicast that's going out of your system or into your system. Like, oh, okay, now I understand one of the big differences between a switch and a hub. Looking for a question. You guys are talking about things. Modular power supply cables. I like modular power supply cables. I'm trying to get neater in my old age. And modular power supplies are just, I don't have to leave extra cables hanging around like we did back in the old days. Butterballs Crawford. Now there's a name. How long does it take to generally pass the CompTIA? Okay, so Butterballs, you understand there are lots and lots of examinations lots and lots of certifications underneath the Computing Technology Industry Association. So there are everything from the very user level, in my opinion, easy certification called IT Fundamentals through, God, what would be one of the harder ones? Man, I got to tell you, that's CASP plus. That is a challenging exam. So anyway, there are lots in there. I'm going to call you BB Crawford. So I guess I'd need to know which one, which certification are we talking about? A plus? So A plus takes on average about, depending on the person, I mean, if you're a very high expertise technician, you probably only need about, maybe 40 hours of study, primarily just doing practice questions to make sure you're comfortable with what's going to be said on the exam. Somebody who has little to no experience would probably need about 220 hours is a good average. There is no rule set that says how many hours you must study. You need to study until you're ready to take the exam. That's why we use practice exams. We use practice exams to see how good we are, and then if we're doing well on the practice exams, then we take the real exam. But 140 to 220 hours is not uncommon. I have schools here in the United States that have 800-hour programs, and they're very successful. So that would just kind of give you an idea. So what are you going to do with that information, right? What you're going to do with that information is you're going to say, okay, well, let's say we're A plus. So you're going to sit there and go, well, how many hours can I study a week? So I can study 15 hours a week. Mike says I need 220 hours. Okay, so 15 hours is 14 weeks. Is that right? 13 weeks? You have 13 weeks of study, and the first thing you do, BB Crawford, is you go to Prometric, View Prometric, Pierce. God bless it, Scott. What's the right name for View's website? And you go sign up for the exam. That's the first thing you got to do. Calculate how many hours you think it's going to take. Add a little buffer in there because of cowardice. That's what I always do. And schedule the exam. Because now it's like tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. And heat and pressure makes diamonds, man. And putting the money down for a test sometime in the future, you'll study. Oh boy, will you study. So that would be my recommendation. Greg Davis, Powerade Zero. I can't find Powerade Zero. In fact, the only reason I got this, I got an 8-pack of this Gatorade Zero, is out at the grocery store, and they were out of the Gatorade Zeros, and I'm all dejected. And there's this lady restocking the shelves, and somebody had bought it, that 8-pack and put it in with the green beans or something. And here's this young woman, getting all this stuff. And I was like, give me that Gatorade Zero. And she's like, yeah, I don't have to restock it. She was very happy. C. Plasman, 2009. I was reading your A+ section on port triggering, began setting up my router, and it has 2 entries. Port trigger from, port trigger to. It has entry. Oh, okay. So, all right. So you got to remember what port triggering is all about, right? So usually port triggering means I am going to send out on, say, well, the classic one is FTP, right? There's others, but FTP is the big one. Active FTP. If you send out on port 21, if you have active FTP set up on the server, it's going to respond back on ports 20 and 21. So on C Plasman, on your router, it says from trigger port 2. My assumption would be is that if I'd have to see a picture of it, but the first thing I would guess is either a port range, which is relatively rare with port triggering, but it's not that big of a deal. Or it could be, and this would even be more rare, where it would say, what port numbers do you want me to only listen on? Most of the time with port triggering, if you say, if I go out on port 21 on this, anything from that IP address, let it back in. I don't care what port number it is. You don't usually set and say, well, if it's out on 21, let 20 be open. You just say, if I do anything on FTP on this router, or port 21, whoever that connection is on my internal network to whatever that is, allow it to go through. My guess is that is a range. I have never in my entire life set up port triggering. That is port triggering, right? Yeah. I have never set up a port trigger range. It's always been, in fact, most of the time when I set up port triggering, I don't even type in a port number. I just say what application it is, because pretty much every router, home router these days, has all the standard triggers built in. There's plenty I've actually typed in the port number too. It's probably a range is my guess. C Plasman 2009, there is no simple answer to this. So the way you do this is you're going to pick, you're messing with this port trigger, because I'm assuming you want to try to port trigger something. And what you need to do is find a FTP, let's say it's FTP. You're going to have to find an FTP server out there in the world, not just any FTP server. Can't be a passive FTP, which is what the majority are these days. Do a Google search for public active FTP server. They're out there. And, you just keep messing with your router until you can successfully get your FTP software to work. Yeah. This is always the big challenge when, onvue.com. onvue.com is where you sign up for your exam, B.B. Crawford. So where was I? Yeah, there is no standard way to look at any of these. Every time I come into some new router with port forwarding or port triggering or whatever it is, I was like, who invented this interface? They're half the time they are non-intuitive, and you just got to mess around with it until something works. What I'll tell classes, a lot of times I'll sit there and go, hey, I drive a Mercedes-Benz 280 SLK, nice little fun little get-around car. And I'll look at the class and I'll go, okay, how many of you folks could jump into my car? I'll give you the keys. How many of you folks could jump into my car and run the windshield wipers? And if you're in the United States, which is an automobile culture, most of us have driver's licenses. And here in the States, most of the people raise their hand. And I'll sit there and I'll look at them. I'll go, well, why do you say that? Are you windshield wiper certified? Have you been driving lots of Mercedes 280 SLKs? And the answer, of course, is, well, no, I just drive cars. I know there's a windshield wiper there. I just got to figure out, is it a knob I turn, or is this something on the column, or a button? And that's always the big trick for folks, right? And again, C Plasman 2009, I'm not picking on you. You just gave me a good opportunity to tell a story. And that is, you gotta poke around and try to figure it out. You'll figure it out. I guarantee you jump in my Mercedes, you'll be able to not only run the windshield wiper, but you'll be able to change the intermittents, and I'll bet you could even squirt cleaning solution on my windshield. And it's because we know how to poke around. And it's really, really important on computers. C Plasman 2009, if you really want some help, you're going to have to send me some screenshots. Here, man. C Plasman 2009, take a couple of screenshots, or at least just use your camera on your phone and take a couple of pictures, and I will give you my opinion. And I am dehydrated today. Scarlet Red, why would you pick Ubuntu over Linux Mint? Because I've been using Ubuntu for so long now that I'm just acclimatized to it. I like it. Mint is great. I've fired it up a couple of times and went back to Ubuntu just out of habit. I don't know. I think Dave Rush really likes Linux Mint. He talks that thing up all the time. Hang on, my phone is going nuts here. Is this you, Scott? Sending me secret stuff? Plus, I have a dentist who's like determined to have me show up all the time. All right. So, Scarlett, that's my answer. I think Linux Mint is fine. I have forgotten. Scott, is Linux Mint Debian based? Well, you guys tell me. Is it Debian based? I don't even remember. I'm just hooked on Debian. Anything Debian I'm going to use. Just habit. That's all I got. Stick to safe topics like religion. Yeah. Sex and religion. You got it, Scott. Uh, mm. Corey Woody, hey Mike, love your live Q&A. Thanks, man. Corey, remember, I'm here to answer questions. That's the goal. It really torpedoed a lot of people all over the world when the corona started shutting down schools. You know, we always talk about public schools shutting down, but man, the one that I think affected the most people was private schools and tech schools, and here in the United States, community colleges. I'm not sure what the equivalent would be in other places, but it's that's why we're doing this. It's, you know, and it stinks when you're in a classroom environment and suddenly be yanked out of that. And, you know, I'm sure that algebra classes can do the Zoom thing for high schools, but it doesn't really work for a lot of folks. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to help. Mr. Ruby, thanks for, yeah, no problem. Mr. Ruby, are there any Security Plus topics that you think people may frequently overlook? The one thing I would tell you is, I don't want to get into a lot of details, but log files. And when I say log files, I don't want you to try to memorize 15 different kinds of log files. It's not the way I want you to think about it. I want you to think, if something was, if I have a diagram of a network and there's a switch and a router and all this stuff, and there were certain kinds of problems, where would you look to find a log file that would help you, okay? There's not one answer to that, Mr. Ruby. It depends on what kind of question you get. And you don't even have to know log files. I mean, if you can look at a Wireshark output, you know what a log file looks like, right? IP address to, IP address from, port number, whatever the heck it is. Be able to go through a network and say, oh, if I was worried that a particular computer had malware on it, I'm not going to go looking on the router to try to find a log file, am I? See what I'm coming from? If somebody was trying to penetrate into my network, I'm not going to go into the switch. Now, I know this sounds kind of simple the way I'm saying it, but it can be more complicated. And I wrote a lot of questions on the Security Plus practice questions to try to give people a feel. So if I were to worry about that, I would be thinking, don't memorize port numbers or anything, but think about, if something was happening on a network, where would I go to look for trouble? And most of the time when you're looking for trouble, whatever that is, you're usually looking at a log file, all right? Everything has a log file. There's no exception to that. Unmanaged switches do not have log files, okay? But pretty much everything else. And as long as you keep that attitude in mind, you're never going to have a problem, right? If you're seeing, if nobody can contact the DHCP server, are you going to go look, you're going to find wherever the DHCP server is and talk to it and see what its log files say, right? Yeah, I know it sounds simple, but when you're taking the Security Plus, people seem to forget that stuff. Tiffany Clark, hi. Tiffany Clark, first time here. Welcome, Tiffany Clark. Bum, 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 bum. Looking for a question. Ooh, is it going to be a quiet day? Am I going to go back to the pool here? I'm kidding. Yeah, Mint is Davian. Thank you, Dave. I'd just forgotten. I didn't remember. DC, Mike, do you have on-site training besides online? No, I mean, we will do specialized on-request classes for government and industry, but they're very expensive. I mean, they're not very expensive if you have a lot of people you want to teach, but I don't have public on-site training. Instructor-led training is the word we like to use. And yeah. If you got a big wheelbarrow full of money, though, I'll come to your house. Let's talk about DHCP. Yay. Color definition. I'm late, but I'm back. Well, all right. Scott Jernigan is beeping my phone off the hook. Oh, Scott wants me to confirm the code to get 50% off this week is just the word autumn. AUTUMN. Not MM Live or anything like that. So those of you who've been on before, you know most of our codes start with MMLIVE. That is not the case. The code is AUTUMN, autumn. Tolowitz asking Scott Jernigan about my hats. Why don't you just ask me? Yeah, I put some more hats up there. Just getting things organized a little bit. Yeah, changing up the scenery here a little bit because I know you guys are tired of looking at my drums. The Zerk 678. Zerk 678, how you go? How's it doing, man? Just finished with the Udemy A+ score scheduled test. All right, Zerk, that's good, but remember, you got to go take the actual certification, so go do it, man. Mr. Ruby, how about the ISO, NIST, and any standards? No. Mr. Ruby, I would not worry about memorizing any standards. Make sure that you understand that standards are there. Make sure you understand what a framework is and why we need frameworks. We need frameworks in IT security because most people don't have a clue how to do IT security. The vast majority of people who come into IT security think that they're going to go walking in, oh, let's set up a firewall, you know, let's, set up, network access controls or whatever it is. And that's not it, you know. I mean, the first thing you got to do is set up a very holistic, what is a security control? How do we apply controls? How do we monitor the controls? How do we judge these controls? How do we add more controls or take controls away? How do we go through that process of actually doing it? And then you have these like NIST risk management frameworks and stuff, which are designed for management type people to get their head around what it's going to take to get an army of folks organized to do IT security for an enterprise. And that would be the big thing. I do need to warn you is that, I guess this isn't top secret anymore because the objectives are out. The new upcoming Security Plus 601 is going to be much more interested in that stuff. So hurry up and take the 501. Do it while it's easy, while we understand the questions. Frederico, hi Mike, I put some questions up. Frederico, I missed them. Scott, can you help me out? Whoops, okay, I guess I did. Here's one question. Scott Jernigan said, Sam McFarland asked, what is the difference between US 3.0 and 3.1? I guess you mean USB 3.0 and 3.1? Oh, lordy, lordy. I don't remember the speeds off the top of my head. Scott, are you going to save me? Good old Scott. So, according to Scott Jernigan, and I trust him implicitly, USB 3 was the first USB that got up to 5 gigabits per second. USB naming conventions are insane. USB will name something, then they'll come up with something new, and then they'll backtrack and rename that previous thing to something else. The Wikipedia article on USB will drive you nuts because they've changed the names on all this stuff so many times. They've even changed the numbers, all right? And it can be wildly frustrating. So you'll have like USB 3.1 Gen 1, and then USB 3.1 Gen 2, and then it's then USB 3.1 Gen 3, which is now USB 3.2. Bottom line is, I get frustrated on this stuff myself. Oh, here we go. So Choco Taco, here's what scares me. First of all, Choco Taco, thank you for typing in those numbers. I would have to double check everything you're saying. For example, Choco Taco, you're just typing in 3.2, okay? And I guess maybe this week, Scott, is 3.2 an established term for 40 gigabits per second USB. Now, does that include USB-C or is that just USB-A? See where I'm coming from? So the bottom line is that, yeah, the bottom line is that when it comes to those types of standards, I am going to try to keep up with that and see what is available for USB. And I do, when I'm picking a motherboard, other than form factor, there's really only three criteria that I find really important. Number one, is it going to support the CPU that I'm thinking about, obviously. Number two is RAM capacity, because I do tend to go with a lot of RAM whenever possible. 32, even 64 gigs for some of my bigger systems, and you would be surprised how many motherboards fail to really provide that level of support. Now, right now, it's really easy. Most motherboards can support up to 128 gigs, as long as it's got 8 banks, 8 slots for your DDRs. So CPU, I guess there's 4 criteria. The other thing I'm going to be looking at is what version of NVMe and PCIe are they using, because that's important to me too. But the other one that's really important to me is USB configuration. I use a metric ton of USB stuff. And it's really important to me to have motherboards that support more than your average amount of USB and not necessarily hanging out the back, because I need a lot of stuff up front. So the bottom line is that, like right now, most of the USB stuff I use is keyboards and mice and maybe some sound devices, none of which really have aggressive demands on bandwidth. So I'm less of a panic about those. Whereas people who I do know, like some music folks I know and some stuff like that, people who do USB video and things like that are going to be very paranoid. And a big part of their buying experience is going to be, how is the USB supported? Physically, where do these ports come out? I'm also at that point usually looking for the case. For me, if I have a desktop case that has only 2 USB ports in the front, I'm not interested. So that would be the bigger criteria for me. Notice I'm not in a big panic that I can't quickly say, oh, USB 3.2 is 40 gigabytes or whatever it is. I don't really care, okay? For the exams, it's whatever I say in the book, because CompTIA has not updated any of those types of questions. So that's the other thing that gets you in trouble, because there's new versions of USB that have come out in the 2 years or so since CompTIA did the last A+. So you're going to walk in with the latest cutting edge knowledge. And you're going to go, oh, Mike Meyers' information is 2 years old. That's wrong. I can go on Wikipedia. Here's the right stuff. Yeah, you're going to get the question wrong on the test. I know. Life isn't fair, okay? But it's a big criteria that people mess up with all the time. And especially something like USB, which changes the names of the speeds, you know, full speed, true speed, super speed plus, all that junk, and even the numbering system. And it's something you got to watch out for. Brendan S., what is GDDR RAM and what is it different from DIMMs? So, Brendan, I think what you're asking me is, what is GDDR and how is that different from non-GDDR? Because remember, a DIMM is just a packet type, dual inline memory module. It means that you have chips on both sides and it's faced in one particular direction, that the contacts on each side of the DIMM are different contacts. Whereas with a SIM, single inline memory module, on each side of the contact was the same signal. So you mean, what is GDDR versus non-GDDR, or regular DDR RAM? Simple. GDDR is generally, it's what we call dual ported RAM. Most DDR RAM has a single, keeping it simple, it has one wire for input or output. So if you're making an input where you're trying to get to a particular memory address on the chip, that's also the same wire that makes the output of the 1 or the 0 that you're trying to get. Now keep in mind, you got a lot of these chips, and they give you a big chunk of 1s and 0s, 32-bit or even sometimes 64 bits wide. With graphic DDR, the biggest thing is that it's dual ported. It has a separate input for addressing versus and a separate output for actually getting the data out that you want. There's more, but that's the big one. Yeah, totally. Yeah, Wi-Fi numbering is insane. I will never be able to comfortably use terms like Wi-Fi 4, 5, and 6. I mean, I've just got my 802.11s in my head, and by golly, that's how it is. So Brendan S., I had to make some assumptions on your question. I hope I got it right. The Xerxix78, I should use better punctuation. Just finished your course on Udemy. Have my A+2 course scored online for Friday. I've already taken it once. Did both tests back to back, not recommended. I always tell people to do them back to back, Xerxix, but if it didn't work for you. The reason I always told people to take both A+ exams back to back is that for decades, the X001 and the X002s overlapped. I mean, they really overlap. Like 30% of the questions could be on either exam. With the 1001, 1002, which has been out now for what, a year and a half? This is the first time in the history of CompTIA that they really do seem to have clearly separated the topicality and the questions from the two exams. It's pretty clear separation. This is the first time that I've been starting to tell people you can, schedule a 1001 and then come back and take the 1002, a month later or whatever you want to do. Which is actually kind of frustrating for me because I have written the McGraw-Hill all-in-one CompTIA book as a single book for so long that when I went to McGraw-Hill, I was like, guys, I really think we could make 2 books. Oh, yeah, McGraw-Hill didn't like that. Not at all. They were unhappy campers. So, whatever. I'll continue to write a single book, but my attitude is now changing for the A+, that I do believe you can take the tests. And when I say back-to-back, folks, I mean you make one big study, you schedule both exams, you take one exam, then you schedule the next exam 2 hours later, and you give yourself a 30-minute, smoke break in between them, just take them one after the other. Looking for questions. Paul Skinner is asking about Server Plus. Nah, we're not going to do Server Plus. Paul, it's a great certification. It's just I don't feel that enough people ask for it. We have to make training materials that people want to buy, and that's always been a challenge. Yeah, this is always the other interesting thing I get in trouble with. So CompTIA exams are updated every 3 years, okay? Here you go. You want to go with an ISO standard 27001, which, requires updating of technical instruction. And somebody will sit there, especially towards the end life of a cert, and like with the Security Plus, which is, going to be coming up to 601 fairly soon. And people look at it, oh, well, Mike, this book was written in 2018. I want the 2020 version. No, you don't. You do not. There is no year equivalency with CompTIAs. You go with what number. It's like with Security Plus, currently it's the SY0501, and then here in a few months they're going to shift it up to the SY0601, but the SY0501 is still going to be available through July, I think I heard Scott say. And so when you're thinking about these certs, forget the years. Forget about the year it's in the book. Forget about the year on the practice questions. Just go by what exam is it geared for. Scarlet Red is recommending Quizlets. Mike, can you talk about what we need to know about SCSI drives for the A+? Yeah, man, that's a tough one. I was really surprised when CompTIA still had SCSI as a criteria for the A+. And since that's come out, we've seen very little in terms of questions on that. I'm trying to think the right way to say this. One mistake that a lot of people make when they're studying for any certification exam is they think that they need to cover every single topic on the objectives because they don't want to have a question that they don't know the answer to. In my opinion, there is a return on investment in the amount of time spent studying for a particular topic versus the probability of questions actually appearing in front of you versus the complexity of the questions. And you put all that together, if there's more complicated topics and the probability of questions being small and the amount of learning I would have to do to understand that topic becomes onerous compared to the potential of just a few questions, I don't study for it at all. Look, I got to put a lot of stuff in my training materials because if I don't, Linda or Udemy doesn't care, but like Linda cares because they really check everything very carefully. McGraw-Hill cares a lot. Scott Jernigan thinks I have to cover every topic. But I don't think you do, honestly. Look, certification is D for diploma, baby. Nobody cares what your score is. All they care about is whether you've passed and failed. And in my opinion, if I were to be taking the A+ today, I would probably skip SCSI altogether. That's my opinion. Tolo it. Yeah, Speed Radion's SD cards is lost. DC, VMware versus which? English is not my first language today. VMware versus VirtualBox. Which is better for desktop virtualization? VirtualBox. And why? Because it's really free. VMware really isn't free. And don't tell me about VMware Player or any of that stuff. Unless VMware has gone back to a type of, like 10 years ago when VMware was the only game in town, they had some amazing free options. I'm highly confident that VMware still does not have any free options. VirtualBox is robust. It works well. You can uninstall it easily, unlike some Microsoft solutions. And it's free. Did I mention it was free? It's also free. What did I miss now, Scott? Andy, STL. Oh, wanted to thank you and Dave for hosting Dr. Upton on Raspberry Pi last Friday. Wasn't that a fun session? Dr. Upton was great. He had a cute kid, which never hurts. I like kids. It was an interesting insight. I mean, this guy is like the father of the Raspberry Pi. And he really always thought the Raspberry Pi is a desktop system. And that the I.O. port was from one of his co-inventors. I mean, that was earth-shattering to me. Yeah. It was a great show. Andy STL, I'm so glad you liked it. I loved it. It was really Dave's show. I just came in for color commentary. But I think Dave did a great job with it, considering that guy is in London, so he's 6-7 hours ahead of us. So it's 8-9 o'clock, which is kid bedtime. He was able to stick around for a long time. We had fun giveaways. It was a good time. Good times. Thank you, Andy Estelle. We had blast, and we look forward to doing more of that, and we will. Scarlet Red, what did you good? Oh, the Quizlets. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you sent me emails on the port trigger. There you are. I'm pulling up your email right now. I'm looking. Just looking at your screens here, dude. Oh, okay. I'm going to gamble that you're not going to mind me putting this up on the screen. I will obscure your name. This is that port triggering question, guys. Sorry. I'm just trying to put it up. There's a lot of personal information on here. I know you guys probably don't really care. It's nothing exciting, just work stuff. Hang on. Just trying to get these pictures up. This is hard. I'm using paint. Yeah, don't tease me. All right, this should work. All right. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so what we're looking at here, you see it says port trigger from and port trigger to, and because you typed in a lower number and it didn't like it, that is a range. And what I can't show the rest of you guys, he's got another one beneath that. So it's a range. This is a range. So here I would probably say from 21 to 21. Here I would say 20 to 20. Get the idea? So it's a range of one number. That is a weird interface. I can definitely understand why you'd be confused by that. It took me a minute to try to figure out what was going on there. Scarlet Red. Mike, do you have any study materials for Security Plus? Why, yes. Yes, I do. I have the wonderful Mike Meyers, Scott Jernigan published Security Plus book from McGraw-Hill. I have our Security Plus 501 test bank. Those would be the two things you would be most interested in. We have videos, which you can either get, you can get them from Total Seminars, but you can also get them from our partners, LinkedIn, Udemy, and they often provide deeper discounts, and even we can provide for our own stuff. Scarlett, to me, the three things everybody needs to pass any certification is you need a book, you need videos, and you need practice questions. Those are the only three things you need. And that's why I make these products. Some people think you don't need a book. Well, they're wrong. They're just wrong. I still believe in books. You know, I sell more books today than I did 25 years ago. How crazy is that? It's true. Anyway, so yes, we have a wonderful Security Plus book. And again, this is all for the current SY0501 exam, which is going to be good through July. And Scarlett, we always take the old exam. If you have a choice between a new exam and old exam, always take the old exam. No one's ever going to quiz you and say, aha, what version of Security Plus did you take? Nobody cares. Do you have Security Plus certification or not? Yes or no? Okay, yes, great. All right, thank you. But yeah, we have all that stuff. Also do keep in mind, Scarlett, that just because you were nice enough to show up today, first of all, this is my email. If you ever want to send me any questions or anything, you can send them here at michaelm@totalsem.com. But more importantly, Scarlet Red, in fact, I'm going to give only you this offer, okay? Scarlet Red, you can go to our website, www.totalsem.com, and you can pick up our practice questions, which are already dirt cheap as it is, okay? And if you type in the special code at checkout, AUTUMN, AUTUMN, you get 50% off, just for Scarlett. I'm kidding, it's for everybody. But it's an amazing deal, I recommend it highly. I like my Security Plus stuff. And with a co-author like Scott Jernigan, how can you go wrong? Daniel Wilson. We're at it's after 3 o'clock? Man, wow, time flies when you're having funs. Daniel Wilson. Hi, Mike, currently doing Net Plus. Is there any point in currently tunneling into IPv6? Is it faster, less latency? No, it is slower and a lot more latency. I don't think that the current Net Plus even talks about IPv6 tunneling anymore. Why don't I just have all of the objectives up at all times? Scott Jernigan, can you please do me a favor? Go through the current Net Plus objectives, and would you do me the kindness of looking and verifying that IPv6 tunneling is kind of gone? I mean, those of you who used to type ipconfig in earlier versions of Windows, and you remember seeing Teredo tunnels and 6-to-4 tunnels. I'm not talking Windows 10 here, folks. I'm talking like Windows 8 or 7. Or what was before Windows 7? XP? Yeah? No. So it used to be when you went to a command prompt in Windows and you typed ipconfig, you would see all these tunneling protocols, and they're all gone now. You can still light them up in some situations if you want to, but the whole idea of IPv6 tunneling is pretty much over. I feel that IPv6 has had great penetration down to the last mile now. I do not run into very many lost mile situations where people don't have IPv6 yet. There's a few. And for those people, tunneling is still a thing. Hurricane Electric still provides tunnels for those of you who want one. But that would literally be the only reason I would do that. Hang a minute. Here, I'm going to put something up. For those of you who may not have access to legitimate IPv6, tunneling is still on there. All right. For those of you who still want to play with IPv6 tunnels, and this will work even if you have native IPv6, by the way, folks. So you can go that. You can get, I would recommend checking out tunnelbroker.net. So Hurricane Electric, it did used to be a power company a long time ago, but they provide access, and you can set up tunnels. There we go. And so you can make tunnels from, pick a place that's close to you. You can say we got EU in there and all this other stuff, and you can make a tunnel. What is a tunnel, Mike? Well, not everybody has IPv6 coming from their ISP, okay? And if you're a person who does not have IPv6, let's march through all the processes here so nobody's confused. So here on my computer, I type ipconfig, and you see all this? This tells me that I have IPv6. I'm not going to leave that up too long because one of you juvenile delinquents is going to try to poke on my public IP address. Anyway, so the moment you start seeing those 2600s or 2002s or whatever it is, you know you have native IP coming from your ISP, which is great. If you don't see that, you don't have IPv6. And in that case, you have to get through your ISP who doesn't provide IPv6 upstream to somebody who does. And that's what Hurricane Electric does. They are a IPv6 endpoint, okay? And you, in essence, make a little VPN is what you're doing. You make a VPN from your computer to their endpoint, whatever their IP address is, and you create a tunnel. And it really does look a lot like a VPN. And it's just for years we used Hurricane Electric as a way to allow people to play with IPv6 who otherwise wouldn't have had that opportunity. Today, most people have IPv6. But that, and for Network Plus, that's about as complicated as the questions get. Why do we use an IPv6 tunnel? Because you can't get IPv6 from your ISP. But it is not faster than native IPv6. It is much slower. It has great latency. Anybody who's ever used a VPN knows how slow those are relative to native. Scott Jernigan, right after we do a Pi Plus cert. You're hilarious, Scott Jernigan. You should come work for me. Web Dev Bootcamp, 3:38 p.m. Web Dev at 2:55. Hi, Mike. I logged into my router and it says, want to attack drop. One attempt on today's date at 2:30 p.m. Firewall blocked. What is that? That is what firewalls do. It saw something and it probably used the stateless firewall feature, which is built into every mom and pop Soho router these days. And it saw malform. I don't know what one attack is. I'd have to look it up. That is your firewall doing what you're paying it to do. It blocks something. Now, here. One attack drop. Watch me. Let me Google that for you. It's a pretty common attack. It dates back to 2010. I'm actually using Microsoft Bing. I'm not even using. It's an IPv6 attack. I'm just reading. Give me a minute. This one source, nobody knows what it is. Oh, man. Dude, Web Dev Bootcamp, look it up yourself. Bottom line is, your router was being good. Actually, not the router, the firewall, right? The firewall, which is the software running on your router, did a good job for you. Look at all these @ signs. Everybody talks to Patricia Grace. Why are they always talking to you, Patricia? What? Elbow, I'm using the VMware Player for free. Sure, that's the player. Can you create your own virtual machines with VMware Player? Look, I have to believe that VMware feels the pain of these free Type 2 hypervisors, right? VirtualBox and Hyper-V, which are both technically free, it would seem to me that VMware would have something free. VMware Player doesn't allow you to create a virtual machine, or it didn't the last time I checked 4 years ago. Maybe they've added something to it. I don't know. I am unaware of anything in VMware that will allow you to make virtual machines for free. And there is nothing in the world of CompTIA, A+, Net+, security, and beyond that VirtualBox can't easily handle in terms of your knowledge and understand how these things work. Henry Bruzeau, D for diploma is my favorite saying now. Stick around, Henry. I'm full of them. I'm full of something else, I've been told. Looking for questions. There's a country song in there somewhere. Gee, doesn't anybody want to talk to me? You're all doing your talking among yourselves, leaving me alone. What do I know about VeloCloud? Nothing. VMware does. It's a VMware thing. I don't know anything about it. Let's look it up. Oh, it's an SD-WAN from VMware. Is it free? That's always been a tough part for me to do instruction on software-defined wireless area networks, is that I don't have a easy, free tool to teach people with. Sorry, I'm getting information from everybody. I do not know. Is there something, C Plasman 2009, is there something I should know about it? It's yet another SD-WAN solution. How much does it cost? Solutions for enterprise, solutions for service provider. It ain't free. Looks to be a perfectly nice little SD-WAN solution. Not surprised that VMware has this. They're usually pretty good. C Plasman 2009. What should I know about this? Color definition. I have beginner knowledge of Linux. Me too. Making directories, moving cat, nano. What areas would it be advisable for me to look at? Well, this is really where certifications, I think, are helpful. You know, a lot of times it's like, if I want to learn something, you know, what about an operating system do I want to learn? And, you know, I can go on my own and, you know, play around, and I usually end up just playing games. Or I can look at objectives from certifications. And my answer to you is that you can use A+ and Net+, and to a small degree Security+, have some pretty good information on their objectives. You know, what commands do they want you to learn and stuff like that. And that, I would use that as a criteria. Start with A+. The thing about Linux that people forget is very little serious work happens in the GUI. Very little. Almost all the serious work that is Linux happens at a terminal. And so people, they'll look at like CompTIA A+ objectives for Linux, and they'll go, okay, these are all just a bunch of terminal commands. Don't they want me to find the device manager? Don't they want me to find, you know, I don't know, Process Explorer, whatever it might be? And the answer is no. Those don't really exist in Linux. Or they do, they're usually third-party overlays of some command that you run at a terminal. So the learning of Linux is learning the terminal and learning the command line interface commands and scripting. Look at all these @ signs. Can you talk about logging? Well, we use a lot of wood. If you work for a company that doesn't have a logging system to keep you out of trouble, what would I do if I work for a company that doesn't have a logging system? That would be bad. Well, the first thing I would ask myself is, what part of this network am I responsible for if it goes boom? Am I a desktop support person? Windows has wonderful, powerful logging features. Windows doesn't call it logging, right? You know, Windows calls it Event Viewer. That would be the first big question: is, you know, what am I responsible for if it goes boom? Then the second thing is I would start to find the tools that have me read and configure the logs the way I want them. So let's just say you're a network head and you're watching the amount of traffic that's going through your router. You got one router
out to the internet, I would be making darn good and sure that A, I had a good router, a good managed router. This is usually where words like Cisco come into play, and the reason people buy them. I'm not going to be limited to Cisco here. There's lots of good gateway routers out there for the small office, home office, mid-range. And then the first thing I would start to do is I would say, okay, how do I get to the log? Because I'm lazy and fat and I don't want to get up from my chair. What tool sets can I use to query these logs from the comfort of my chair? And that's where things like SNMP and SIEM are going to really come into play for you, where these are pretty, I'm not going to say they're trivial tools, but they're not that hard. A lot of freeware options out there, a lot of paid ones out there, where you can sit there and query your switches and what's my throughput, how much traffic is coming from this part of the network. And most of these tools allow you to make fairly convenient graphs. It's basically just a web page that you set up that allows you to monitor these things on a close basis and begin to experiment with that. That would be the first place I would go. It's not like it's not one tool or one protocol. There's a lot of them out there, and playing with that stuff and configuring. The tool set you're going to use in a Windows environment is going to be pretty different than the one you're going to use in a Unix environment. The tool set you're going to use supporting Windows systems is going to be very different than the tool system you're going to probably be using to support your network appliances. So, but the most important thing you can do here, more than anything else, is play. The logs are there. You can probably tweak and configure the logs to look for the stuff you want. That other people have been in the exact same situation you have, and you need to find those forums where those people are doing that stuff. And these are just some good Google searches away from you finding that. And you're going to talk to these people, and 3 guys are going to say use this tool, and 4 guys are going to say use that tool, and you're going to try them both. You're going to spend a couple of months just messing up. And that's literally what being an IT person means. First do no harm, but playing around and realizing that there's no single one way to do anything in this world. And there's no single protocol or anything. And having the fun and literally enjoying that process is a big part of it. Oh, did you see the screen? This is C Plasma. Did you see the screen I posted at the bottom? Active FTP and redundant FTP. I don't know what redundant active FTP is. Let me look. Bear with me, guys. All right, C Plasma in 2009, you sent me 2 pictures that were embedded into that email. The pictures came up pretty small. I'm trying to read them with moderate success. C Plasma 2009. The images you sent me don't have enough resolution. It's coming out. I zoomed in and I can't read it. I'm sorry. Send it to me again. We can try again. If we don't get to it today, we'll get to it on Wednesday. Dr. Quinn at 311. Hey, Mike, do you have any plans to invite Dr. James Stanger again?
Haven't really thought about it. He gave us a lot to chew on when he was on about the new Security Plus. I mean, literally, I found out after the fact. I was double checking Security Plus objectives, and Dr. Stanger was kind of like hitting them for me. He was actually helping me out. I'm still full of data from him, so probably not anytime soon. But Dr. Quinn, if you had something you really wanted me to ask him about or something, where we could, he's more than glad to come back on. So that's not it. I just don't have the right thing to say to him. Vista, forgot Vista. BDBYT, what do you recommend, CCNA or Net Plus? I really like Net Plus. I tell everybody the Network Plus is the most important certification you'll never need. I don't see a lot of jobs where people go, must be Net Plus certified. I do see stuff for CCNA, CCNP. But if you go into Cisco and you count on Cisco for your entry-level understanding of what networking is, you're going to be bent into a weird way of looking at networks. Most Cisco people I know are a little weird, and it's not that they're wrong. They're very right. And Cisco certainly is the driving force for networking appliances, have been for 25, 30 years. But if you want to learn about VLANs, I'd really recommend you do Net Plus first, and then realize that Cisco's way of doing VLANs is really their invention. And if you want to learn about DNS, do Network Plus first, and don't wait to get into Microsoft Active Directory DNS or something weird and like that. I really like Network Plus a lot. I think it is the biggest eye-opener class that we teach. And go for your CCNA, but I'd still do Network Plus first. Good old Vista. Yeah, I did forget Vista when we were talking about that, didn't I? Hello, Thomas Robinson. DC, how much longer will we be able to use IPv4? It is much easier to remember numbers than IPv6. Yeah, but with IPv6, you don't have to remember numbers. IPv6 is so vastly better than IPv4, it's not even funny. Where do I start? No more NAT. No more ARP broadcasts. Simple to configure subnetting conceptualizations based on how you work with your ISP. Oh, gosh. Technically, no more DHCP. I mean, it does a lot of really great things. Will you, from time to time, have to type in long IP addresses for DNS servers? That will happen sometimes, but a lot less than you think. I've had to type IPv6 addresses out in anger less than 100 times in the 20 years I've played with it. 10 to be more than 15 years. IPv6 does a lot of stuff that we don't even see. IPv6 is going to clean up the tier 1 internet and make it reduce latencies. You take a look at a tier 1 router, one of the big routers, the $3 million ones, and the routing table in those routers is 30,000 lines long, 50,000 lines long. And that's what makes big routers expensive. It's not like they do some special feature. In fact, most of the really high-end routers are extremely simplistic. The feature set in your home router is going to be a lot more than the feature set you're going to see in most of the super high-end routers, but the super high-end routers can do one thing really good. They can take a look at every silly packet coming through there, scan it through a 30,000 line list of routes, and get it to the right route very, very quickly.
So IPv6 is great. How much longer will IPv4 around? Don't know. I really do think that there are a lot of people out there who are running almost exclusively IPv6 now, and they don't even know it. When I do a stand-up class, when I'm teaching IPv6, as long as I know that they've got good internet connectivity out, and there's nothing weird like a weird IPv4 only DNS server or anything like that, I'll tell them to let's go ahead and just turn off IPv4. Turn it off. Everybody's like, ah. In most situations, it runs just fine. Windows local area networks run just fine. In fact, in many cases, automatically go to IPv6. If you do anything in the world of Google, it's going to be IPv6. It's the little mom and pop individual websites is the big problem. DNS is completely IPv6. You don't need DHCP. Hard to say. I don't think we have much more than 10 years. It could be only 5 years. It's just a confidence level thing.
C. Plasman, I looked it up, VeloCloud, and I have a job connecting it to a network next month. It looks simple enough, but you mentioned SD-WAN. Well, it's an SD-WAN solution, right? So you're basically moving most of your more serious WAN connectivity stuff up to the cloud, right? So your primary interconnectivity to the world is through a box which goes directly to this solution. And then that solution is your front-facing world to the rest of the internet. And that's where your, DMZs and all that stuff is going to be appearing is up there in the cloud. I mean, that's what software-defined networking is, right? There's a lot more to than that, but I get in trouble. A lot of people confuse SDN, software-defined networking, with SD-WAN. And they have some similar features, but they can actually be very different animals. Cat piss underbar never clean. Man, how do you get a name like that? You sit there going, I want to be offensive, but in a cool way. It's all good. It's all good. Hey, Mike, I'm changing careers. Me too. After 10 years in the design field, I've scheduled my A+ exams for next month. Good luck. Oh no, guys. 3:24 p.m. Cat piss never clean said, should I wait to start applying for jobs until after I take the A+? What do you think I'm going to tell this guy? You go ahead and type it in. Cat piss never clean. Watch the bottom of the screen. The gang's going to tell you what to do right now. First of all, congratulations on taking a new career path. Remember, with 10 years in design, you might want to consider just doing the IT aspect of design. Don't throw away 10 years of experience. I mean, if you just hated what you were doing, sure. But I always get nervous when people do a career change is that I'm going to go in IT and I'm going to be a complete gringo. And you're not going to be, because you're going to be, you're going to have all these life experiences. And don't walk away from an industry. Just do IT in that industry. Oh, Andre already said it for me. Thank you, Andre. David Boyd, would you recommend the A+ for a software developer or the AWS? No, I would think it would be very inappropriate. Unless your software development was hardware interfacing or something like that, I would find that to be a waste of time. Yeah, David, I know I'm taking a sale away from myself. I would not think that would be a good thing. Or it's a good thing. I don't think it would be a necessary thing, nor do I think it would enhance your career. But here's the one thing, because you'll be a software developer, you're going to want a hot-rodded system, and that A+ will be helpful. That is hilarious. Andre already answered for it. Get a job. Always get a job. And Andre is absolutely right. That is the first thing we do. You do not look at any certification, any IT certification, not just CompTIA. You don't look at these certifications as, oh, I'll get these certifications. People go, oh, we're going to give you a job. Yay. The only thing certifications do is they get your name towards the top of the stack of resumes. That's all it does. And there's always a job out there. There's always people looking for nerds, and you should be working. Certifications should be done on nights and weekends while you're making money, paying rent. So I'm having fun. Yeah, I'm going to interrupt. You guys are talking about putting screws in the motherboards. Yeah. I put just the minimum amount of screws that make me happy, which is usually 3. Okay, the one place I'll be better about screws is wherever I'm snapping in stuff, I like to have a lot of screws there to keep that tight over that. A lot of times people will, they'll forget to put the standouts underneath it. And then all of a sudden you're stamping in a card and the board's going, and you're like, yeah. Standouts are more important than screws. Do you guys struggle with imposter syndrome? Yes, everybody does. Cat piss, everybody does that. Well, you know what's funny about cat piss is I like to drink wine, which I'm quitting again because I'm going to get back on track, back on my diet. Anyway, it's when we describe a particular wine called a Sauvignon Blanc, which is a white wine, that one of the signs that the flavor notes that we look for in a Sauvignon Blanc, especially an American one, is the flavor notes literally called cat's piss. So I know. Next time you guys drink Sauvignon Blanc, you're going to be sitting there going, oh, why did Mike tell me this? I used to like this wine, but it's actually a flavor note that's important. Cat piss, we all struggle with imposter syndrome. I do, you know. It's normal. And it will fade over time. But the reality is that, you know, none of us are perfect encyclopedias of all the knowledge there is. I will tell you that the IT industry got a lot easier once the internet really started to kick in. It was a different game before, say, 1995. You know, your ability to quickly look up through forums and download a driver and stuff that didn't really exist before then. I mean, then you really want to talk about an imposter syndrome, yipe. But it's okay. First, do no harm. That's really the big thing. Make backups. Make sure people know the downside of you working on their systems. I've wiped out people's photographs and memories and electronic copies of deeds. You know, make backups. Make sure people understand the downside of what you're doing. But other than that, and Cat's Piss, the thing you're going to discover is it doesn't take a whole lot of experience for you to realize that all these people who you thought were gods are idiots. And it's okay. Don't fight with other techs. That's always a big one too. Don't try to do, you know, as techs we're always trying to one-up each other. Don't do that. It's really hard not to, especially when you're like, oh, I got all this knowledge about the USB versions or whatever it might be. Not picking on anybody. Cat's Piss, do me a favor. Get on YouTube and do a search for Mike Meyers' 10 Commandments. It's a video I did about 10 years ago, and it is still valid today. And it just talks about what does it mean to be a nerd in today's world. I like it, and it's kind of funny too. Yeah, Mike Meyers' 10 Commandments. And it's a great little video. I'm nervous. Is that actually going to show up if we do a search on that? I'm in YouTube real quick. Oh, it came right up. There's like 6 different versions of it. They're all the same. It doesn't matter which one you pick. We even have a copy of it here on the Total Seminars channel. Mike Meyers' 10 Commandments. So they any of these are fine. That only has 500 views. Check it out. I think you'll find it handy. And it will help reduce that imposter syndrome. Not get rid of it, but it'll reduce it. Alan Duggan, hey Mike, is it important to update the firmware on your PC or laptop? No, yes. Yes, no. Sometimes it's critically important, and a lot of times it isn't. I think the big mistake people make, especially when it comes, and it's not just flashing your system bias. I mean, it can be, you've got cameras. I had cameras laying around that have a flash on them. So it's don't go thinking it's just your PCs or laptops, okay? Phones are pretty automated. You don't have to worry about those. But I would never do an automated thing when it comes to flashing that stuff. I'm going to flash stuff because I am presented with information that makes that flash compelling enough for me to want to do it. And that's the only reason I'm going to do it. Let's say I've got an Asus motherboard. I'm going to go onto the Asus sites from time to time, just seeing what's there. And if it shows like there's a new flash for my particular BIOS, I'm going to read what it says. You know, it's like, you know, simplified Chinese. No, I'm not going to do that one. You know, I had a motherboard that had both old school USB 3.0 and 3.1 slots on it, and I couldn't even get it to boot properly into Windows. And then they came out with a flash for the BIOS that fixed it. In that case, was critical. I had a bunch of cameras laying around that had a huge security hole in them, terrible one. And yeah, I flashed those to fix that security hole. Staying on top of things. Most of the time, these types of things come up. You hear about some kind of attack, or you hear about some kind of new, you know, technology that's causing trouble on gigabyte motherboards. Those would be the times that I do it. I do not generally blindly update my flash whenever I update. I do not blindly flash my system BIOS all higgly-piggly. Oh, C. Plasman 2009, back at 329, he said, what's imposter syndrome? You're doing something and you're like, I'm not qualified to do this. I'm a complete joke. They're going to arrest me, yeah, which happens a lot in the IT world. I'm new to the IT field and there's just so much info out there. Dude, we're all overwhelmed. I mean, there's no way you can keep up with this stuff. You don't really have to. You got the internet. The internet's amazing. 95% of the problems that I run into on computers, even that would include a lot that I know the answer to, I'm still going to be doing queries. I'm typing error codes into a Google search. I'm typing in driver numbers. I'm doing all this different stuff because it's there, you know. Where are we down to? 3:30. Mark Wheeler. Hi, Mike. Are there free courses for Microsoft 365 Certified Fundamentals? We don't have any. You might want to check lynda.com. There's stuff out there. I don't want to be advertising other courses, but you might want to check that out. Total Seminars does not provide any Microsoft 365 training. C. Plassman, on jobs I run into wannabe contractors that love to drop names and acronyms and they don't know what they're doing. Yep, that is a big problem. We call that technobabble, and it's possibly the most dangerous thing you can do in front of me. The 3 sexiest words that a technician can say to me. You want to say 3 sexy words to Mike Meyers? You ready? I don't know. That's powerful words, because it's hard to find techs who simply say, I don't know. Now, they're going to put a comma on the end of that, comma, but I'm going to look it up and find the answer. Then I'm happy. You know, that I don't know. Those are powerful words. Technobabbling me is a terrible, terrible mistake, especially if you work for me, because I'll just bury you. Isn't it funny, Scott Jernigan, that the practical internet, the useful internet's been around since, I don't know, I would say 95. I was looking at my like my eBay membership is from 1998 and stuff like that. There was internet before then, but it wasn't very good. Thomas Robinson, Mike, I heard on the internet news somewhere that some leaked information about Microsoft operating systems code. Oh, that's not that new. So Microsoft has realized that they've kind of missed the boat a little bit, because a lot of software development is done on Macs. Not because there's anything particularly good about the Mac operating system. I don't want to get in that argument. But because Mac supports a nice native Unix shell. And it's really convenient for coder guys who are, using GitHub and stuff like that, those tool sets, which really lean heavily on Linux tools, or Linux-like tools, GNU tools. And the guys at my office who are doing all the software development, they're all on Macs. And Microsoft has recognized that they had made a kind of a mistake there. And Microsoft, you can actually get a bash shell for Windows now. And it's okay. But there had to be a lot of interchange of code to make that happen. And it took a lot of Microsoft picking up on GNU licensed code. And there was a lot of crossover stuff. And there was a lot of exposure of the Microsoft operating system. But I didn't think it was that much. It's not like you could have the complete source code for Windows 10 or anything like that. Yeah, can you imagine that? Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, good job. The Zersk 678. I'm about to get laid off. I'm sorry to hear that, man. Nuclear security isn't something I can continue with. So after A+, I will do WGUCSBS. Western Governors University Computer Science Bachelor of Science. I think that's great. Western Governors, it's an online school, but they've had a couple of bad things, but in general, they're a fully accredited university. And most of the time, especially when you're an HR person in IT, if you're looking for, if somebody needs a 4-year degree, as long as there's an accreditation, they'll take it from wherever they want. The Zerk 678, do me a favor, buddy. Do this just for me. Zerk 678, this is for you. Send me an email. Tell me about your experience with Western Governors. I'm actually kind of curious. I've been hearing a couple of things that were a little questionable, but in general, no, it's all good. But I'd be interested in your experience. I'd also be interested in, more than anything else, is how much money are you paying for that degree? Don't tell us here. I don't want to, but I would be extremely interested to get an email from you so we could discuss that a little bit. It's just it's not a critical situation. It's just something I want to stay up on. That's all. No bullies. I remember you, no bullies. Do you have any good stories about when you were learning and made a dumb mistake? Oh, 1,000. But I usually need a glass of wine or a beer before I start getting into too much of those. And we've only got 5 minutes left. Goodness sakes. It's good to hear others' not so perfect moments. Oh, no bullies. I guarantee you
that I have destroyed well over $1 million worth of physical equipment. Surely more than that, but we'll say well over $1 million I have personally destroyed in terms of critical data losses. I don't even know how to measure stuff like that, you know. Yeah. Do backups. Always do backups. Even if that backup is you're working on your barber's cousin's sister's hairdresser's machine, just a thumb drive. It's like, look, man, if this machine dies, what's going to make you cry? It's literally what I'll tell them. Like, oh, I've got pictures of my parents. Okay, here's a thumb drive. Let's get all the pictures. Let's get see, we got that. So I don't even worry about fancy official backups a lot of times. I just want to make sure that, you know, their income tax document and their, you know, all that stuff gets copied to a thumb drive before I start doing much of anything. I will do a backup anytime I crack open a case. If I'm not cracking open a case, I probably won't do a backup, but otherwise I do. Oh, WinDev Bootcamp, it was Windows XP code? Okay, now WinDev Bootcamp, there's been a few different times that Windows code is leaked. So I had heard that fairly recently that there was part of, for the interface stuff so that they could get the bash shell running, that there was some leaks that had come through there. Because I remember when the XP code was leaked, but that was a few years ago, wasn't it? I'm going to hold on. Dave Rush, you've never had a Sauvignon Blanc that has the cat's piss flavor now? Oh. Come on over to the house, man. Bring Robin. All right, we just got a couple more minutes left. I'm going to scroll through real quick, see if there's any more questions. I got time for like one more question. Greg Davis, yeah, 1995, which is benefits the internet telnet between local universities. Yeah, 95. Those were heady days, man. To connect to the internet, you had to make the sound. Yeah, it was great. Mating call, that's what we called it. Xing Jerry Huang. I apologize, I'm terrible at Chinese names. I want to be a network admin, but I don't have any working experience in IT. Got my CNA, going to take A+. All right, why are you taking all these? Ziwang, where are you located? Are you here in the States? Are you in China? Are you in Europe? I mean, please don't go get a bunch of certifications and think you're going to instantly get a job. That's not how it works. Go get a job. Go work as a salesperson at a computer store. You know, get some entry-level job. We have 3 or 4 different videos on how to get a job, entry-level job in IT. And you need to watch those, guys. Just do a Google search or a YouTube search, and they'll be in there for you. But I just need to, I'm not picking on you. I tell everybody that. Just don't think you're going to get a bunch of certifications and magically a job's going to appear. Doesn't work that way. Mark Wheeler, thank you, Mike. You're welcome, Mark. Henry Bruzeau, I'm starting my first IT help desk job on Wednesday. Any advice? Let the user talk until they're done talking. The biggest problem we have as computer nerds is that we think we know the answer and we cut people off. Don't do that. Song, you're in Dallas? Dude, just go to Best Buy like today and go get a job. Do your certifications on nights and weekends. Have an income, you know? I mean, if you're not working, that's the thing. I mean, I guess if you're working and going for all these certs, I guess that'd be okay. But, you know, you should be working in IT. You know, IT is one of the few worlds left where you don't have to have a college degree. It's going to be more on the blue-collar side of things, but you can get a job. And I got to tell you, Dallas is a happening town for work. Houston's better. Well, Texas is the best place in the world to work. It's like we've always got jobs everywhere. But there's a lot of work. Call if you're just, or if you want to get into like some of the security stuff, I know that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you want to call the Dallas, ready, Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory. It's, I don't remember where it is exactly in Dallas. Don't call the field office, call the RCFL. They're always looking for folks, and you should consider applying there. Good stuff. All right, guys, I guess we're wrapping it up. It's after 4 o'clock. I'm coughing. I'm out of G2. Guys, listen, on Wednesday, Dave Rush has a exclusive OR cryptography thing already set up, so we'll probably just do that on Wednesday. I did get a few emails. I just forgot. If you sent me an email, and I'm not just talking about the guys who sent one today, but I had some other ones, and if you had come in and I missed it, I apologize. Wednesday is going to be email question cleanup day. So there's only 3 or 4 in there. It's not too bad. But I will get those covered. I apologize that I did not get to those. Also, on Wednesday, we'll do some giveaways. We'll give away some free practice questions, something like that. I was going to do some today, but like I tell the IRS every year, I forgot. But other than that, I guess we're going to have to sign off, guys. Let's go ahead and wrap her all up. Thank you so much for showing up today. I'll see you guys Wednesday. Don't forget, Friday is Dave Rush with more fun with the Raspberry Pi. Always informative. And I'm going to let you go. So until next Wednesday at 2 o'clock Central Daylight Time, this is your Uncle Mikey saying good night. Good night.